Have you ever heard a secret that completely changed how you saw someone? I have. At my own son's wedding in New York, my 6-year-old grandson approached me and whispered, "Grandma, look under the table." What I discovered under that elegant party table not only destroyed the wedding we were celebrating, but revealed a secret my family had kept for years. Leave a like if you've also discovered something that changed everything. Subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from, because this story will show how sometimes children know much more than we imagine. I thought I was going to the happiest wedding of my life. My son Michael had finally found true love with Jennifer, a sweet and caring woman. But what my little grandson showed me transformed that day of joy into the beginning of a devastating discovery. Saturday, September 15th of the year 2024. The Plaza Hotel in Manhattan was stunning. White and gold flowers decorated the ballroom. Crystal chandeliers reflected soft light onto the elegant tables, and 200 formally dressed guests awaited the ceremony of my son Michael with Jennifer Walsh. At 72, I had seen many weddings, but this one promised to be special. Michael, my only son, was radiant at the altar. At 45, he had finally found someone who made him smile that genuine way I hadn't seen since his adolescence. Jennifer was everything I could have wished for in a daughter-in-law: intelligent, caring, well-educated, and most importantly, she clearly loved my son. Grandma Rose. Tommy, my 6-year-old grandson, ran up to me in the reception hall. He looked adorable in his miniature tuxedo, blonde hair combed to the side, rosy cheeks from running around the party. Tommy was the son of my older son, David, who had moved to Seattle after his divorce 3 years ago. Seeing Tommy always filled me with joy. "Hi, my love." I picked him up. "You look handsome. How do you feel about getting a new auntie?" "It's cool," Tommy said, but there was something strange in his voice, a hesitation that wasn't typical of him. 6-year-olds are usually direct, sometimes too honest. "Grandma, can I tell you a secret?" "Of course, dear." "What secret?" Tommy looked around, checking if anyone was listening. Then he leaned closer to my ear. "It's not Aunt Jennifer's first wedding," I chuckled softly. "I know, Tommy. Jennifer was married before, remember? She told me about her ex-husband. Sometimes people get married more than once." "No, Grandma," Tommy insisted, his little voice growing more serious. "It's not her second wedding. It's her fourth." My smile froze. "What do you mean, dear?" "Daddy told me. He said not to tell anyone, but I think you should know. David had told Tommy this. My son David knew something about Jennifer that I didn't. And why would a 6-year-old know details about the marital life of the woman marrying my other son?" "Tommy, where did you hear this?" "Daddy was talking on the phone with someone yesterday. He said Aunt Jennifer got married 4 times and Uncle Michael doesn't know everything." My stomach began to churn. "Tommy, are you sure about what you heard?" "I am." "And Grandma?" Tommy looked around again, then whispered even lower, "There's more. Daddy hid some papers under our table. He said they're evidence. Do you want to see? Evidence?" David had brought evidence to his own brother's wedding? My mind was racing, trying to process what Tommy was telling me. "Where are these papers?" "Under our table. Table number 7. Daddy taped them there." I looked across the elegant ballroom to table number 7, where David was sitting with some cousins. He seemed normal, talking and laughing. But now that Tommy had planted this seed of doubt, I noticed David avoided looking in Michael and Jennifer's direction. "Tommy, why did Daddy bring papers to the wedding?" "He said Uncle Michael needs to know the truth, but not today. He said he doesn't want to ruin the party, but he also can't let Uncle Michael get married without knowing." David was torn between protecting his brother and protecting his special day. But what truth was so important that it needed to be documented and hidden at a wedding party? "Grandma," Tommy continued, "do you think you should tell Uncle Michael?" It was an impossible question to answer. How to explain to a 6-year-old the complexity of family secrets, divided loyalties, and the terrible timing of devastating revelations? "Tommy, let Grandma think about it, okay? For now, this stays between us two." "Okay, but Grandma, are you going to look at the papers?" I looked again at table number 7. Jennifer was in the center of the ballroom, radiant in her wedding dress, receiving congratulations from guests. Michael was beside her, his arm around his new wife's waist, smiling as if he were the happiest man in the world. If what Tommy was saying was true, My son had just married a woman who had lied about her personal history, and my other son had discovered this but chose to let the wedding happen. "Tommy," I said carefully, "when did Daddy say he was going to tell Uncle Michael the truth?" He said after the honeymoon, so as not to ruin their vacation. After the honeymoon, David was planning to blow up his brother's marriage 2 weeks after the ceremony. When Michael and Jennifer returned from Santorini, I looked at Tommy, with his 6 years of age and his brutal honesty, and made a decision that would change everything. "Tommy, can you show me where those papers are?" His smile was one of relief. "You're going to look?" "I'm going to look. Because if my 6-year-old grandson knew secrets about my son's new wife, I needed to know what those secrets were. And I needed to decide if David was right to wait, or if Michael deserved to know the truth before leaving for his honeymoon with a woman who apparently had lied about who she really was. Sometimes, the most important discoveries come from the most unexpected places, and sometimes it's children who have the courage to tell the truths that adults prefer to hide. Tommy discreetly guided me through the elegant ballroom to table number 7. The party was in full swing. Dinner had ended, the dance floor was packed, and the orchestra played soft jazz. No one paid attention to a grandmother and her grandson approaching a seemingly empty table. David was across the room, chatting with cousins he hadn't seen in years. From where I stood, I could see him laughing at some joke, a glass of champagne in hand, appearing completely relaxed. But now that Tommy had alerted me, I noticed my son constantly checking Michael and Jennifer's location in the ballroom. "Here, Grandma," Tommy whispered, pointing under the table. Daddy taped it underneath. I bent down, pretending I had dropped something, and fumbled under the table. My fingers found a large envelope taped to the underside of the table. Carefully, I detached the envelope and hid it in my purse. "Got it," I whispered to Tommy. "Now let's go back to our table and act normal." "Are you going to open it now?" "I'll open it in the restroom, where no one can see." We casually walked back to our table, where the rest of the family was animatedly discussing the upcoming speeches. I waited a few minutes, participating in the conversation about how beautiful Jennifer looked and how happy Michael seemed, before excusing myself to go to the restroom. In the elegant ladies' room of the Plaza Hotel, I locked the door and opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were a stack of printed internet documents, marriage certificates, newspaper articles, and photographs. The first document made my blood run cold. It was a marriage certificate dated of the year 2018. Jennifer Walsh marrying Robert Mitchell in Las Vegas. But Jennifer had told me her last marriage was in 2016 and to a man named James Peterson. I continued flipping through. Another certificate from of the year 2020. Jennifer Walsh marrying William Harper in Reno, Nevada. Another name she had never mentioned. And another from of the year 2022. Jennifer Walsh marrying Anthony Rodriguez in Atlantic City, New Jersey. 3 marriages Jennifer hadn't mentioned to my family. Tommy was right. This wasn't her second marriage. It was at least her 5th. But what truly sickened me were the newspaper articles David had printed. Woman accused of marital fraud in Nevada, Las Vegas Review-Journal, March of the year 2019. The article described how a woman named Jennifer Walsh had been accused of marrying older men, draining their bank accounts, and disappearing before divorces were finalized. Investigation into fraudulent marriages in Atlantic City Press, January of the year 2023. This article mentioned Jennifer Walsh as a person of interest in an investigation into a network of marriages for money. My hands were trembling so much I almost dropped the papers. Jennifer wasn't just a woman who had married multiple times. She was a criminal who used marriage as a way to steal money from men, and my son had just married her. There were photos too. Jennifer at other weddings, always radiant, always dressed in white, always beside older men who seemed genuinely in love. In every photo, she looked exactly as she did today, sweet, innocent, in love. The last document in the envelope was a handwritten note from David. "Michael needs to know, but I can't destroy his wedding on the day of the ceremony. I'll wait until they return from their honeymoon. If anything happens to me, these documents are at table 7. David." "If anything happens to him?" Why did David think something could happen to him? I left the restroom with shaky legs and returned to the ballroom. The party continued normally, but now I saw everything through a completely different lens. Jennifer dancing with Michael, smiling at guests, receiving congratulations. Every gesture seemed calculated. Every smile seemed fake. Tommy saw me coming back and ran to me. "Grandma, did you see the papers?" "I did, dear. Are they bad, right?" How could a 6-year-old understand the gravity of the situation better than the adults around him? "Tommy, did you tell anyone else about this?" "Only you. Daddy said not to tell anyone else." "And you won't tell, right?" "Not to aunts, not to cousins, not to anyone, I promise." "But Grandma, what are you going to do?" It was the million-dollar question. What was I going to do? Confront Jennifer at her own wedding? Pull Michael aside and destroy the happiest day of his life? Wait as David planned and let my son go on his honeymoon with a criminal? I looked across the ballroom and saw Michael twirling Jennifer on the dance floor. They looked so happy, so in love, so perfect together. But now I knew it was all an elaborate lie. "Grandma?" Tommy tugged at my skirt. "Are you okay?" "I'm thinking, dear. Difficult decisions need time to think." Daddy also thought a lot. He stayed up last night looking at these papers. David had lost sleep over this. My son was carrying the burden of protecting his brother, but also of respecting his special day. At that moment, I made a decision that would change everything for our family. I wasn't going to wait until after the honeymoon. I returned to the family table with the documents burning in my purse as if they were hot coals. I sat next to my sister-in-law, Margaret, who was animatedly commenting on how Jennifer looked like a fairy tale princess. The irony was too bitter to bear. "Rose, you're pale," Margaret observed, touching my arm. "Are you feeling well?" "Just a little tired," I lied. "It's been a long day." Tommy came to sit on my lap, his little blue eyes studying me with concern. Children have an uncanny ability to sense when adults are troubled, even when we try to hide it. "Grandma, do you want some water?" he asked softly. "Thank you, dear. I'm fine, but I wasn't fine." Every time I looked at Jennifer, I saw a completely different woman. The way she greeted each guest with calculated effusiveness, how she memorized names instantly, how she made each person feel special, all of it wasn't natural charm. It was the refined technique of a professional manipulator. I watched Jennifer interact with my cousin Harold, an 80-year-old man who had recently been widowed. She held his hands as they talked, tilted her head with genuine interest when he spoke about his late wife, even wiped a tear from her own face when he became emotional. It was a perfect performance of empathy, but now I knew that was exactly what it was, a performance. "She's an angel," Harold told me when Jennifer moved away to greet other guests. "Michael is a lucky man." Jennifer reminded me of my dear Martha. My stomach churned. Jennifer was practicing her skills even here, at her own wedding, identifying potential targets even as she married into my family. I looked for David in the ballroom and found him talking to some college friends near the bar. He seemed to be enjoying himself, but when our eyes met across the room, I saw the tension he was hiding. David waved casually, but there was a question in his eyes. He knew I had discovered the documents. Tommy noticed my fixed gaze on his father. "Do you want to go talk to Daddy?" he suggested innocently. "Maybe in a little while," I replied. But I kept watching David. My son was carrying a heavy burden alone, and now I shared that burden with him. The master of ceremonies announced it was time for the speeches. Michael went up to the microphone first, radiant with happiness, and began to talk about how Jennifer had changed his life. 2 years ago, I thought true love was something that only happened in movies, Michael said, his emotional voice echoing through the ballroom. I was wrong about everything. Jennifer showed me that it's never too late to find your soulmate. Soulmate. The words cut my heart like knives. Michael truly believed he had found the woman of his dreams, and I was sitting there knowing she was probably the worst choice he could have made. Jennifer brought light into my life, Michael continued. She made me believe in second chances, in new beginnings, in building something beautiful together. The guests collectively sighed as Jennifer wiped seemingly genuine tears. She went up to the stage and kissed Michael softly, eliciting enthusiastic applause from the entire audience. Then it was Jennifer's turn to speak. "Michael," she began, her voice clear and sweet, "you gave me something I searched for my entire life. a family, a home, a place where I can finally be myself, to be herself. The hypocrisy was nauseating. I promise to be the wife you deserve, Jennifer continued, looking directly at Michael with eyes shining with tears. I promise to honor our vows, protect our love, and build a life that makes us proud. Honor the vows. Protect the love. Every word was a lie wrapped in silk. And I promise to love your family as if it were my own, Jennifer said, looking directly at me. Rose, thank you for welcoming me with open arms. I promise to take care of your son as you took care of him. The applause was deafening, but I could barely breathe. Jennifer had looked me in the eyes and lied shamelessly, knowing I was the mother of the man she was planning to deceive. Tommy tugged at my sleeve. Grandma, are you crying? I touched my face and realized tears were streaming down my cheeks. But they weren't tears of joy as everyone around assumed. They were tears of absolute horror. They're happy tears, dear, I lied to Tommy. After the speeches, the party continued with more dancing and lively conversations. I took a moment when Jennifer went to the restroom to approach Michael. Son, I said, pulling him into a more private corner. Can I talk to you for a minute? Of course, Mom, what is it? I looked at my son, so happy, so in love, so convinced he had found eternal happiness, and almost lost my courage. Michael, are you sure you know Jennifer well? He laughed. Mom, we've been together for 2 years. Of course, I know her well. But do you know her story? Her past? Her previous relationships? Michael's expression changed slightly. Why do you ask? It's just, well, sometimes people have secrets. Mom, Michael interrupted me gently. I know you worry about me. But Jennifer told me everything about her life. She was married once before to a man who didn't treat her well. She's completely honest with me about everything. Once. Jennifer had said she was married once, when in fact it was at least 4 times, possibly more. Michael, what if I told you there are things about Jennifer that you might not know? My son frowned. What kind of things? This was the moment. I could tell him everything right then, show him the documents, destroy his wedding on the very night of the ceremony. Or I could back down, let him go on his honeymoon, and deal with the consequences later. I looked across the ballroom and saw Jennifer returning from the restroom, gracefully walking among the guests, smiling and greeting everyone like the perfect bride. Then I saw David watching me from his table, an expression of panic in his eyes. He had realized I was about to tell Michael everything, and he was terrified I would ruin the party. Tommy appeared by my side at that moment, as if sensing the tension in the air. Uncle Michael, he said innocently, did you know Aunt Jennifer has been married many times? The world stopped. Michael looked at me with an expression I will never forget. It was confusion mixed with terror, as if the ground were crumbling beneath his feet. Around us, the party continued. Laughter, music, lively conversations. But the 3 of us were trapped in a bubble of devastating silence. Mom, Michael said, his voice almost inaudible, please tell me Tommy is confused. Please tell me this is a child's imagination. I looked at my grandson, who was watching us with that peculiar seriousness of children who know they've said something important but don't fully understand the consequences. Tommy had burst the bubble of lies with the brutal honesty only little ones possess. Michael, I began carefully. Tommy heard David talking about some concerns regarding Jennifer. What kind of concerns? I picked up my purse and discreetly showed him the envelope I had taken from under the table. David investigated Jennifer's past. There are things she hasn't told you. Michael's hands trembled as he took the envelope. Not here, he whispered, looking around the elegant ballroom full of family and friends. I can't. Not here. Let's go somewhere private, I suggested. I'm coming too, Tommy said, grabbing my hand. I helped Grandma find the papers. Michael looked at his brother's son with a mixture of gratitude and sadness. Thank you for telling me, Tommy. You did the right thing. We found an empty conference room on the upper floor of the Plaza Hotel. Michael closed the door behind us and, with visibly trembling hands, opened the envelope David had prepared. The first document he saw was the marriage certificate from 2022, Jennifer Walsh marrying Anthony Rodriguez just 2 years ago, long after what she had said was her only previous marriage. This must be a mistake, Michael murmured, but his voice lacked conviction. Maybe it's another Jennifer Walsh. Look at the photos, Tommy said, climbing onto a chair to see better. Michael turned to the photographs David had printed. Jennifer in a white wedding dress, radiant, kissing Anthony Rodriguez at the altar. The date in the corner of the photo confirmed June 15th, 2022, just 2 years ago. My God, Michael whispered. He continued flipping through the documents. Each marriage certificate was like a punch to the gut. William Harper in 2020, Robert Mitchell in 2018, and these were just the ones David had managed to find. But it was the newspaper articles that completely destroyed any hope Michael might still have. Marital fraud, he read aloud, the words coming out broken. Investigation into fraudulent marriages. Woman disappears with elderly husband's assets. Uncle Michael, Tommy said softly, are you okay? Michael sat heavily in a chair, holding the documents as if they were evidence of a crime, which technically they were. How did David find this out? He hired a private investigator, I replied. Apparently David suspected something a few weeks ago. Why didn't he tell me? He was going to tell you. After the honeymoon, David didn't want to destroy your wedding on the day of the ceremony. Michael laughed bitterly. So he preferred to let me go to Santorini with a criminal? He was torn between protecting you and protecting this special day. Special, Michael repeated the word as if it were poisonous. Mom, I just married a woman who lied to me about literally everything. Tommy approached and touched Michael's arm. Daddy said you'd be sad when you found out, but he said it was better to be sad knowing the truth than happy being deceived. Profound wisdom coming from a 6-year-old. Michael, I said gently, what do you want to do? He looked at the documents once more, as if expecting the words to magically change. I don't know. How can I go back downstairs and pretend nothing happened? How can I look at Jennifer knowing that she is a criminal, Tommy completed with the frankness of children. Tommy's right, I said. Son, Jennifer isn't just a woman who lied about her past. She's a predator who uses marriage to steal money from men, and you are her next target. Michael ran his hands through his face. 2 hours ago, I was the happiest man in the world. Now you know the truth, I completed. And the truth, however painful, gives you the power to choose what to do. But what can I do? There are 200 people downstairs. The party cost $50,000. The gifts, the honeymoon already paid for? $50,000 is cheap compared to what Jennifer could steal from you if she had more time, I observed. Tommy climbed onto Michael's lap. Uncle Michael, do you have a lot of money? Why do you ask that, Tommy? Because Daddy said Aunt Jennifer always marries men who have a lot of money. He said she chooses them for that. Michael looked at me with growing horror. Mom, Jennifer knows about my investments. She knows about Grandpa's inheritance. She knows about everything. And now she's legally your wife, I pointed out, with rights to your assets. The panic in Michael's eyes was palpable. I need to tell David. My God, I need to annul this marriage. Michael, take a deep breath, I advised. Let's think this through calmly. He stood up abruptly. Mom, I just found out I married a criminal who is probably planning to rob me. How can I be calm? At that moment, we heard footsteps in the hallway. Someone was looking for us. Michael? Rose? It was Jennifer's voice, sweet and concerned. Are you up here? The three of us froze. Jennifer was looking for us. Michael, darling, the guests are asking where you are. Her voice grew closer. It's time to cut the cake. Michael looked at me with absolute panic. What do I do? You go downstairs and finish the party, I whispered quickly. Act normal until we can make a plan. How can I act normal? For the sake of your guests, for the sake of the family, you deal with Jennifer later. The doorknob turned. Jennifer was coming in. Here you are, she said, smiling radiantly. I was looking everywhere. Jennifer stopped when she saw our expressions. 3 obviously disturbed people, an envelope of documents in Michael's hand, a child who seemed to have seen something he shouldn't have. Is everything all right? Jennifer asked, but there was a subtle change in her voice. Caution, suspicion. Everything's fine, Michael replied. but his voice sounded forced even to me. Jennifer looked at the envelope in his hands. "What's that?" "Just family documents," Michael lied weakly. "What kind of family documents would you be reading on our wedding day?" The question was asked with a seemingly casual tone, but I heard the underlying threat. Jennifer was calculating, assessing the situation, deciding how to react. Tommy, blessed with childlike honesty, answered before any of us could stop him. "They're papers about your other marriages, Aunt Jennifer." The silence that followed was deafening. The silence in the conference room was so thick it could be cut with a knife. Jennifer stood completely still for perhaps 10 seconds, her radiant smile frozen on her face like a mask that had cracked. Then, slowly, her expression changed in a way that made my blood run cold. The sweet smile vanished. The gentle eyes hardened. The delicate posture became stiff and calculating. It was like watching an actress break character live, revealing the real person beneath the performance. "Tommy," Jennifer said. Her voice still controlled, but with a coldness that wasn't there before. "What are those papers?" Tommy pressed closer to Michael, his childlike instincts sensing that something had dangerously shifted in the room's atmosphere. "Daddy found papers about you," Tommy said with the brutal honesty of children, "about when you married other men." Jennifer looked at the envelope in Michael's hands, then at me, then back at Michael. It was as if she were calculating her options, deciding what her best strategy would be. "Michael," she said softly, but there was steel in her voice. "May I see those documents?" "Jennifer," Michael began, his voice breaking, "you lied to me." "Lied about what, darling?" "About everything." The words came out louder than he intended. "You told me you were married once! And here are certificates for at least 4 different marriages." Jennifer was silent for a moment, then sighed deeply. When she spoke again, all pretense of innocence had vanished. "Michael, you don't understand the complexity of my situation." "Complexity?" Michael stood up, still holding Tommy. "Jennifer, there are newspaper articles here accusing you of marital fraud. Unfounded accusations. 4 marriages in 6 years, Jennifer. 4. So what if it was 4? Or 5 or 6? What does it matter?" The casualness with which she admitted everything was shocking. Jennifer didn't even try to deny it anymore. It was as if she had decided the performance was no longer worth it. "What does it matter?" Michael repeated, incredulous. "Jennifer, you lied to me about your entire personal history. I told you what you needed to know." "Needed to know?" "I needed to know I married a criminal." Jennifer laughed, a cold sound that had nothing to do with the sweet woman we had known for the past 2 years. "Criminal?" "Michael, I never broke any law. Marrying men is not a crime. Marrying men to steal their money is. Prove it." The confidence in her voice was chilling. Jennifer had clearly done this so many times that she knew exactly how to navigate the legal consequences. Tommy tugged at Michael's shirt. "Uncle Michael, I want to leave here." "In a minute, Tommy," Michael said, but his voice was trembling. Jennifer approached, and instinctively I placed myself between her and my grandson. There was something in her posture that activated all my protective instincts. "Michael," Jennifer said, changing tactics, her voice softening again, "I love you." "That hasn't changed." "Yes, I didn't tell you about all my previous relationships, but that's because I wanted a fresh start with you. A fresh start based on lies, based on love. Michael, you are different from the others. With you, I really want it to work out." "How do I know you're not lying now, too?" "Because you know me. 2 years together, Michael. You know my heart." "I thought I did," Michael said, his voice broken with sadness. "But apparently, I know nothing about you." Jennifer tried to approach him, but Michael recoiled, still holding Tommy. "Michael, don't let a malicious investigation destroy what we have." "Malicious?" I finally spoke. "Jennifer, there is documented evidence that you did this to multiple men." Jennifer turned to me, and the coldness in her eyes was terrifying. "Rose, with all due respect, this is between me and my husband. Your husband whom you completely deceived." "I didn't deceive anyone." Michael asked about my marital past. I said I had been married before. "That's true. You deliberately omitted crucial information." "Omitting is not lying." Her twisted logic was nauseating. Jennifer had refined her techniques to the point of knowing exactly how to protect herself. "Jennifer," Michael said, his voice growing firmer, "I need to know the complete truth. How many husbands have you had? Does it matter?" "It matters a lot." Jennifer sighed as if it were an inconvenient question. 7. The number dropped into the room like a bomb. 7? Michael repeated, incredulous. 7 official marriages. Some long relationships that didn't make it to the altar. Tommy looked at me with confusion. "Grandma, is it normal to have 7 husbands?" "No, dear," I replied softly. "It's not normal." "And what happened to them?" Michael asked. Jennifer shrugged. "Some worked for a while, others didn't. Relationships end, Michael. That's life. And their money? What happened to the money?" "What money?" "Jennifer, don't pretend you don't know what I'm talking about. The articles mention men who lost entire savings. If some men made bad financial choices during our relationships, that's not my problem." The coldness with which she spoke about destroying lives was terrifying. "Michael," I said, "we need to get out of this room. We need to talk to David." "Wait," Jennifer said, and there was something different in her voice now, something dangerous. "You're not going to leave here and destroy my life." "Your life?" Michael turned to her. "Jennifer, you destroyed my life. You completely deceived me, and you're going to keep quiet about it." "What do you mean?" "Because if you try to annul this marriage, if you try to expose me publicly, I will sue you for defamation. I will say your family persecuted me, slandered me, tried to destroy my reputation out of jealousy." The threat was clear and calculated. "And Michael," Jennifer continued, "don't forget we are married now. I have legal rights to your assets. If you try to leave me, it will cost you a lot." It was pure blackmail. Jennifer was showing her true colors, and they were darker than any of us had imagined. "Uncle Michael," Tommy whispered. "She's being mean." From the mouths of babes. "Jennifer," I said firmly, "you will not intimidate my family." "I'm not intimidating anyone. Rose, I'm simply explaining the legal reality of the situation." Michael looked at the documents in his hands, then at Jennifer, then at me. "Jennifer, is this what you did to your other husbands too? Threatened them when they found out the truth?" "Michael, you're different. With you, I want it to work. How can I believe anything you say?" Jennifer tried to approach him one last time, but Michael definitively recoiled. "Because you love me," she said simply, "and I love you too." "Love based on lies is not love," Michael replied. "It's manipulation." Jennifer's mask had completely fallen. The sweet woman we had known for 2 years had never truly existed, and now we needed to figure out how to protect my family from her. The tension in the room was becoming unbearable. Jennifer had completely abandoned her facade of a loving wife and was now clearly in survival mode, calculating how to minimize the damage to her operation. Michael held Tommy as if he were an emotional shield, and I could see my son struggling between the shock of the discovery and the need to protect his family. "Michael," Jennifer said, changing tactics once again, "I know you're shocked. I know it looks bad. But think about what we're throwing away. We're throwing away lies, Jennifer. We're throwing away 2 years of life together. 2 years of real moments of real love. Was it real?" Michael asked, and the vulnerability in his voice broke my heart. "Was any of what we lived real?" Jennifer hesitated for a fraction of a second, and in that hesitation, I saw the answer. "Of course it was real," she said, but the pause had revealed everything. Tommy tugged at Michael's shirt. "Uncle Michael, can we leave? I don't like it here. Just one more minute, Tommy." "Actually," I said firmly, "I think we should go now. This conversation isn't leading anywhere productive." "I agree," Michael said, walking towards the door. "Wait," Jennifer said, and there was desperation in her voice now. "We can't just leave here as if nothing happened. There are 200 people downstairs waiting for the cake cutting." "Jennifer," Michael stopped at the door, "how do you suggest I go downstairs and pretend I'm still happy to marry you?" "Because you have no choice." Her voice rose an octave. "Michael, if you cause a scene downstairs, if you humiliate my family in front of all these guests, I will destroy you in court." The threat was clear and calculated. "My family?" I repeated. "Jennifer, what family? Your mother died 3 years ago. Your father you said you had no contact with. and you told me you were an only child. Jennifer realized her mistake immediately. I have cousins. What cousins? Jennifer, did you invent an entire family to seem more sympathetic to us? Her silence confirmed my suspicion. My God, Michael whispered. You even lied about your family. Michael, please, enough. Michael exploded. Enough with the lies. Enough with the manipulation. Jennifer, our marriage was over before it even began. It's not over until I say it's over. The phrase came out with such venom that all of us instinctively recoiled. Jennifer, I said carefully, what exactly do you mean by that? I mean that Michael married me 3 hours ago. We are husband and wife in the eyes of the law, and if he tries to get rid of me, it's going to be very expensive. Are you threatening me? I'm explaining reality to you, Michael. Half of your assets are now legally mine. Your house, your investments, your inheritance, all of that is now marital property. Tommy looked at me with confusion. Grandma, what is marital property? It's when married people share the things they own, dear. But Aunt Jennifer lied. She shouldn't get Uncle Michael's things if she lied. From the mouths of babes. Tommy had summarized the injustice of the entire situation. Tommy's right, Michael said. Jennifer, you obtained this marriage through fraud. You have no right to anything of mine. Prove it was fraud. I have all these documents, which prove I married before. That's not fraud, Michael. That's just information I chose not to share. Her twisted logic was impressive. Jennifer had refined her legal techniques to the point of knowing exactly how to protect herself. My phone rang at that moment. It was David. Mom, where are you all? Jennifer said she was looking for you, but that was 20 minutes ago. I looked at Jennifer, who was watching me carefully. We're talking about some family matters. What family matters? Mom, did you see the papers? I did. Silence on the other end. And Michael? Michael saw them too. Shit. Sorry for the language, Mom, but how did he react? As you would expect. Where are you? I need to come up there. Conference room on the 3rd floor. I'm coming up. I hung up the phone. Jennifer had heard the entire conversation. David is coming here, she said. It wasn't a question. He is. Great. Then I can talk to the man who hired investigators to persecute me. Jennifer, Michael said, David was protecting his family, which is exactly what I should have done before marrying you. Protecting from what? From a woman who loves you? From a criminal who was planning to rob me? I never stole anything from anyone. Then explain the newspaper articles about marital fraud. Unfounded accusations that were never proven. At that moment, David arrived. He opened the conference room door, saw the scene, Michael holding Tommy, me looking like I'd seen a ghost, and Jennifer in a defensive posture, and immediately understood what had happened. Michael, David said softly, I'm sorry you found out this way. Why didn't you tell me before? Because I wanted you to have your special day. I was going to tell you after the honeymoon. My special day? Michael laughed bitterly. David, I married a woman who lied about literally everything in her life. David looked at Jennifer. Jennifer, I imagine you've already tried to deny everything. I have nothing to deny. David, marrying multiple times is not a crime. Marrying for money and then disappearing with the husband's assets is. Prove it. I have more evidence if you want to see it, David said calmly. I spoke with 2 of your ex-husbands. They are willing to testify about how you manipulated them. Jennifer's confidence wavered for the first time. You talked to them? I spoke with Robert Mitchell and William Harper. Both lost substantial savings during their marriages to you. Both are interested in justice. They can't prove anything. Actually, they can. Robert has bank records showing suspicious transfers. William has recordings of conversations where you admit to only being interested in his money. Jennifer visibly paled. You're trying to frame me. We're trying to protect Michael, David corrected. And now that he knows the truth, he needs to decide what to do. Michael looked at the documents in his hands, then at Jennifer, then at all of us. I know exactly what I'm going to do. Michael straightened his shoulders, and for the first time since we discovered the truth about Jennifer, I saw genuine determination in his eyes. No longer shock, no longer confusion, just a cold, calculated resolve. Jennifer, he said, his voice steady and firm. "We're going down to the ballroom now." "Michael, what are you planning?" "We're going to finish our wedding party." Jennifer seemed confused, almost hopeful. You're going to pretend nothing happened?" "I'm not going to pretend anything. I'm going to tell everyone exactly what happened." Jennifer's face went white as paper. "You can't do that." "I can and I will. Jennifer, you deceived not only me, but my entire family, all my friends. 200 people who came here to celebrate what they thought was true love. Michael, if you publicly humiliate me, I will sue you for defamation, slander, destruction of reputation." "With what money?" David interrupted. "Jennifer, I hired investigators to check your financial situation too. You're broke. You have credit card debt in 4 different states. That's not true." "It is true, and what's more, I found out you're still technically married to Anthony Rodriguez. You never finalized the divorce." The bomb David had just dropped completely silenced the room. "What?" Michael turned to David. "She's still married?" "The divorce process was started but never finalized. Technically, Jennifer committed bigamy by marrying you today." Jennifer leaned against the wall, clearly in a panic. That's a technical error." "Technical error?" I exploded. "Jennifer, you married my son knowing you were still married to another man?" "The divorce was almost finalized." "Almost doesn't count," Michael shouted. "Jennifer, you made me commit a crime. Our marriage isn't even legal." Tommy tugged at my skirt. "Grandma, does that mean they're not really married?" "It means exactly that, dear." The irony of the situation was almost comical. Jennifer had planned an elaborate fraud, but had made a legal mistake that completely invalidated her rights to Michael's assets. "Jennifer," David said calmly, "you have 2 options. You can come with us downstairs and publicly admit what you've done, or you can leave this hotel now and never contact our family again. And if I choose the second option, then we won't pursue criminal charges against you. But if you choose to stay and fight, I will make sure you are arrested for bigamy, marital fraud, and any other charges my lawyers can find." Jennifer looked around the room, like a cornered animal looking for an escape. "You can't treat me like this. I have rights." "You have no rights here," Michael said coldly. "Jennifer, you lied, manipulated, deceived, and committed crimes. The only reason I'm not calling the police right now is that I want my guests to understand what happened. Michael, please, think about your reputation. Think about how this will look." "My reputation?" Michael laughed bitterly. "Jennifer, my reputation will be that of a man who had the courage to expose a criminal, even if it was embarrassing for me." "And my reputation?" "Your reputation is your problem. You should have thought about that before turning marriage into a profession." Jennifer made one last desperate attempt. "Rose," she turned to me, "you've always been kind to me. Surely you don't want to see a woman publicly destroyed." I looked at this woman who had deceived my family for 2 years, who had manipulated my son, who had lied about literally everything in her life. "Jennifer," I said calmly, "you chose to destroy lives through lies and manipulation. Now you will find out what it's like when the lies are exposed." "Tommy," Michael said, "do you want to stay up here with Grandma while Daddy and I go downstairs to talk to people?" "No," Tommy said immediately. "I want to go too. I want to see you tell everyone the truth." David smiled proudly at his son. "Tommy, you were very brave to tell Uncle Michael the truth. Very brave indeed. Daddy always says lies are bad," Tommy explained with the simple logic of children. "Daddy's right," Michael said, picking Tommy up. "And now we're going to show everyone how important it is to tell the truth." Jennifer made one last attempt to bargain. "Michael, if you let me leave quietly, I promise I will never contact your family again. I can just disappear, like you did with your other husbands." "Michael, please." "Jennifer, you had multiple chances to be honest with me." 2 years of chances. You chose to lie every time." Michael walked to the door, still carrying Tommy. David and I followed him. Jennifer stood in the middle of the room, clearly realizing she had completely lost control of the situation. "Michael," she shouted as we were leaving, "if you do this, you'll regret it." Michael turned one last time. "Jennifer, the only thing I regret is not having found out who you really were before today." We went down to the main ballroom, where 200 guests were chatting animatedly, drinking champagne and waiting for the cake cutting. They had no idea they were about to witness one of the most dramatic revelations of their lives. Michael walked to the stage where he had given his speech of love a few hours earlier. The master of ceremonies handed him the microphone. Assuming it was time for the cake cutting, "Ladies and gentlemen," Michael began, his voice echoing through the elegant ballroom, "I ask for a few minutes of your attention." The conversations gradually died down. Guests turned to the stage, smiling, expecting another romantic moment. "A few hours ago, I was here talking about true love, about finding my soulmate, about starting a new life with Jennifer." Murmurs of approval ran through the ballroom. "Unfortunately, I just found out that everything I thought I knew about my wife was a lie." The silence that followed was absolute. 200 people holding their breath. "Jennifer is not the woman you've known for the past 2 years. And our marriage, which we celebrated today, isn't even legal." The bomb had been dropped. The silence in the Plaza Hotel ballroom was deafening. 200 people simultaneously processing what Michael had just said. Some mouths opened in shock, others frowned in confusion, and a few people began to whisper nervously among themselves. Michael continued, his voice firm and clear through the hotel's sound system. "I know this is shocking for everyone. It was shocking for me too when I found out 20 minutes ago that the woman I married today has been married at least 7 times previously, and at least one of those marriages has not yet been legally dissolved." A collective murmur of shock swept through the ballroom like a wave. "This means," Michael continued, "that our marriage today was technically an act of bigamy, making our ceremony legally invalid." Margaret, my sister-in-law, stood up from the main table. "Michael, dear, are you sure about what you're saying?" "Unfortunately, I am, Aunt Margaret. My brother David investigated Jennifer's past and discovered a pattern of behavior that can best be described as marital fraud." Guests began to turn to each other, whispering intensely. Some seemed incredulous, others seemed fascinated by the drama, and a few seemed uncomfortable, as if they wanted to be anywhere but there. "Where is Jennifer now?" asked Harold, my elderly cousin who had praised Jennifer earlier. Michael looked around the ballroom. "Jennifer is somewhere in the hotel, presumably deciding whether she wants to come explain her actions to you or if she prefers to simply disappear, as she apparently did with previous husbands." At that moment, the ballroom doors opened dramatically. Jennifer appeared at the entrance, but she looked completely different from the radiant bride of a few hours ago. Her wedding dress was crumpled, her makeup smeared, and there was an expression of desperation and anger on her face that completely transformed her appearance. "Michael!" she shouted across the ballroom, walking determinedly to the stage. "You have no right to destroy my life like this." Guests turned to watch the drama unfold before them, as if it were a live play. "Jennifer," Michael said into the microphone, "do you want to explain to these people why you lied about being married only once when in fact it was at least 7 times? That's a private matter between husband and wife." "We are not husband and wife. You are still legally married to Anthony Rodriguez." Jennifer stopped in the middle of the ballroom, realizing all eyes were on her. Some guests were recording with their phones. Others were whispering intensely among themselves. The moment had become a complete public spectacle. Tommy, still in Michael's lap, leaned into the microphone. "Aunt Jennifer, why did you lie to everyone?" The innocent question from a 6-year-old cut through all the adult tension in the room. Jennifer looked at Tommy, then at Michael, then at the 200 faces watching her with a mixture of fascination and horror. I didn't lie about everything," Jennifer said, her voice carrying across the ballroom without a microphone. "I love Michael. That's true. But you didn't tell me about the other 7 husbands," Michael replied through the microphone. "And you didn't tell me you were still married to one of them. Technical details." "Bigamy is not a technical detail, Jennifer. It's a crime." David approached the stage and took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, as Michael's brother and Tommy's father, I want to explain how we discovered this information." He looked around the ballroom full of family and friends. "A few weeks ago, I began to have doubts about some inconsistencies in the stories Jennifer told about her past. I hired a private investigator, and what we discovered was disturbing." David pulled some documents from his jacket. Jennifer Walsh married Robert Mitchell in 2018, William Harper in 2020, Anthony Rodriguez in 2022. and at least 4 other men in the last 10 years. In each case, she disappeared with a significant portion of the husband's assets. That's defamation, Jennifer shouted. You can't prove any of that. Actually, I can. Robert Mitchell and William Harper have agreed to provide detailed testimony about how you financially manipulated them. Harold, my cousin, slowly rose from his chair. Jennifer, were you marrying for money? Jennifer looked at Harold, clearly remembering their previous conversation where she had shown peculiar interest in his financial situation. Harold, it's not what it looks like. It looks exactly what it is, Harold said sadly. You were assessing me as your next target, weren't you? Jennifer's silence was answer enough. Margaret approached Jennifer. Darling, why did you do this? Why did you lie to all of us? Because you would never have accepted me if you knew the truth. And what is the truth? Michael asked through the microphone. Jennifer looked around the ballroom, seeing 200 people waiting for her answer. Her mask had completely fallen, and now there was no more pretending possible. The truth is, I'm desperate, she cried. The truth is I have no money, no family, no opportunities. The truth is that marrying rich men is the only way I found to survive. The brutal admission completely silenced the ballroom. And yes, Jennifer continued, tears streaming down her face, I did this before. Many times. But with you, Michael, it was different. With you, I really wanted it to work. How can I believe that when you lied about literally everything? Because as much as I lied about my past, my feelings for you were real. Tommy leaned into the microphone again. But if you really loved Uncle Michael, why didn't you tell him the truth? The simple question from a child exposed the core of the entire issue. Jennifer had no answer. It was the moment when all the manipulation, all the lies, all the theater came to an end, and 200 people were witnesses to the truth finally coming to light. Jennifer stood in the middle of the elegant Plaza Hotel ballroom, surrounded by 200 guests who now saw her for who she really was. There was no more performance possible, no more charm she could use, no more lies that could save her. It was the complete end of her most ambitious operation. Jennifer, a female voice cut the silence. It was Catherine, one of Jennifer's oldest friends, or at least someone we thought was her friend. You told me your first husband had died in a car accident. You said you were devastated and had never fully recovered. Jennifer closed her eyes. Catherine, but now I find out you've had 7 husbands? That the sad story you told me was completely made up? I needed a convincing story. A convincing story? Catherine stood up, her voice trembling with anger. Jennifer, I cried with you. I comforted you. I introduced you to Michael because I thought you deserved a second chance at love. The ballroom erupted in shocked murmurs. Catherine had been the one to introduce Jennifer to Michael. Wait, Michael said from the stage. Catherine, you introduced Jennifer to me? I did, Catherine admitted, clearly mortified. She was in my book club. She said she was new in town, trying to rebuild her life after a tragedy. She seemed so genuine, so vulnerable. Michael, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Of course you didn't know, David said. Jennifer is a professional at creating convincing stories. Jennifer turned to Catherine. Our book club was real. Our friendship was real. How can I know what was real and what was a performance? Catherine replied, her voice broken. Jennifer, you used our friendship to get to Michael. That's not real friendship. That's manipulation. Other guests began to stand up, sharing their own experiences with Jennifer. She borrowed $2,000 from me 3 months ago, said a man I recognized as Michael's colleague. She said it was for a medical emergency. She never paid it back. She convinced me to invest in a business that never existed, a woman said. I lost $5,000. Each revelation was like another layer being peeled away from Jennifer's lies. She hadn't just deceived Michael. She had created an entire network of small cons around him. Enough. Jennifer cried, trying to regain some control of the situation. You don't understand. I grew up with nothing. No family, no money, no opportunities. I learned to survive the only way I knew how. Survive by lying and stealing? Harold asked sadly. Survive by using the resources I had. Yes, I married men for money. Yes, I made up stories to seem more sympathetic. But all I wanted was security, a stable life, a true family. Tommy, still in Michael's lap, looked at Jennifer with the genuine confusion of a child trying to understand the adult world. "Aunt Jennifer, if you wanted a family, why didn't you just ask? Grandma always says families help each other." The simplicity of Tommy's observation brought tears to the eyes of several people in the ballroom. A 6-year-old had summarized the tragedy of it all. Jennifer could have had exactly what she was looking for if she had been honest from the beginning. "Tommy," Jennifer said softly, walking towards the stage, "you're too young to understand how the world works." "I understand that lying is wrong," Tommy replied with the confidence of children. "Daddy taught me that." Jennifer stopped, realizing that even a child could see through her justifications. "Jennifer," Michael said, his voice softer now but still firm, "you're right about one thing. You grew up without the advantages many of us had, and I'm sorry for that. Genuinely." Jennifer looked at him with hope, as if he were about to offer forgiveness or another chance. "But," Michael continued, "your circumstances don't justify destroying other people's lives. You made choices, Jennifer, bad choices, and now you have to face the consequences." "What consequences? Are you going to report me to the police?" David approached the microphone again. "That depends on you." "What do you mean?" "If you agree to leave this city, leave this family alone, and seek professional help for your problems, we won't press criminal charges. And if I refuse, then I will personally make sure that every one of your victims from the last 10 years knows where to find you. And I will provide them with all the necessary documentation for legal proceedings." It was a clear ultimatum. Jennifer could leave quietly or face justice from multiple victims. Jennifer looked around the ballroom once more. 200 faces that had smiled at her a few hours ago now watched her with a mixture of pity, anger, and contempt. "I accept," she said finally, her voice defeated. "I'll leave." "Today," David specified. "You leave today. But my things, I'll send your things to an address you provide. But you leave this hotel now and never contact any member of this family again." Jennifer nodded slowly. She was completely defeated. "Michael," she said one last time, "even if you don't believe it, I want you to know that my feelings for you were genuine. You were different from the others. With you, I really wanted to change." "If you wanted to change," Michael replied sadly, "you would have started with honesty." Jennifer walked towards the ballroom exit. Guests automatically moved away, creating a corridor to the door. It was like watching a dethroned queen making her final walk of shame. At the door, Jennifer turned one last time. "I hope you all never understand what it's like to be so desperate that lying seems like the only option." And with that, she left the Plaza Hotel, left Michael's life, and left our family forever. The silence that followed was profound. 200 people processing what they had just witnessed. Finally, Harold stood up and began to applaud. Slowly, other guests joined him, until the entire ballroom was applauding Michael for his courage to expose the truth. Michael came down from the stage, still carrying Tommy, and walked over to me. "Mom," he said, his voice broken with emotion, "did I do the right thing?" I took my son in my arms. "You did the bravest and most right thing you could have done." David joined us, and for the first time in years, my 2 sons genuinely embraced. "Thank you for protecting me," Michael said to David. "That's what brothers are for." Tommy looked at all of us. "So we won't have to keep secrets anymore?" "No, dear," I said, kissing his forehead. "No more secrets." And at that moment, surrounded by my family in the middle of a wedding party that had turned into something completely different, I felt profound gratitude. Gratitude for a brave grandson who had warned us. Gratitude for a son who had investigated when he suspected. Gratitude for another son who had the courage to expose the truth even if it was painful. And gratitude for the truth, always the truth, no matter how difficult it is to face it. 3 months later. December 2024. Snow fell softly over Central Park, visible through the windows of my Manhattan apartment. Michael, David, Tommy, and I were gathered for Sunday dinner, a tradition we had resumed after the traumatic events of September. Tommy was on the living room floor assembling a puzzle complex for his age, his tongue sticking out in concentration. Michael was in the kitchen helping me prepare dinner, and David was flipping through a newspaper on the couch. It was a scene of domestic normalcy that seemed precious after everything we had been through. "Grandma," Tommy called from the living room, "can I ask you a question?" "Of course, dear. What do you want to know? Is Aunt Jennifer okay?" The question caught me by surprise. After everything Jennifer had done, Tommy still worried about her. Children have an impressive capacity for empathy even when adults have given up. "We don't know, Tommy. Jennifer left and we haven't heard from her since. I hope she's okay. I hope she's learned not to lie anymore." Michael came out of the kitchen, wiping his hands on a cloth. "Tommy, you're very kind to worry about her. Daddy says that even when people do bad things, we can still hope they get better." David smiled at his son. "That's exactly what I teach him. Holding people accountable for their actions doesn't mean wishing them ill." I sat on the couch next to David. "Any news about the investigations?" "Some," David replied, lowering the newspaper. "Two of Jennifer's ex-husbands have filed civil lawsuits against her. They're trying to recover the money they lost. And criminally? The prosecution in Nevada is investigating the allegations of marital fraud. But it will be difficult to prove. Jennifer was always careful to keep her activities in legally gray areas." "Is she going to jail?" Tommy asked, overhearing the conversation. "Probably not, dear," David replied. "But she'll have to pay back a lot of money if the civil lawsuits are successful." Michael went back to the kitchen, and I followed him. He was stirring a pot of sauce, but I noticed his thoughts were elsewhere. "How are you coping with everything, son?" Michael sighed deeply. "Some days are better than others. I wake up and for a few seconds forget everything happened. Then I remember and it's like the world crumbles again. It's normal to feel that way." "I know it is." The therapist says the same thing. "But Mom, what hurts me most isn't that Jennifer lied. It's that I didn't realize." 2 years, Mom. How did I spend 2 years with someone and not see who she really was?" It was the question Michael had been asking since September. "Because Jennifer was very good at what she did," I replied gently. "Son, she deceived 7 men before you. All of them intelligent, all of them successful. It wasn't your fault for not realizing. It was her skill at hiding. But the signs were there. Small inconsistencies in her stories, questions she avoided answering, moments where the mask almost fell. If I had paid more attention..." "Michael, you can't blame yourself for trusting someone you loved. Trust is what honest people do. Jennifer abused that trust." Michael stopped stirring the sauce and turned to me. "Do you know what the hardest part of it all was?" "What?" "Realizing that part of me still cares about her. I still find myself thinking, where is she? Is she eating properly? Is she safe? Yeah, and I hate feeling that way about someone who betrayed me so completely." I took my son's hands. "Michael, that just shows you have a good heart. You can be angry at someone and still care about that person's well-being. Both things can be true at the same time. How do you do that? How do you remain kind after witnessing so much falsehood? Because Jennifer's falsehood doesn't define how I live my life. She chose to lie. I choose to continue trusting. I'll just be more careful about who I give my trust to." We returned to the living room where David was showing something on his phone to Tommy. "Look here, Tommy. Remember we talked about consequences?" "I remember. When we do bad things happen to us." "Exactly. Well, Aunt Jennifer is facing some consequences now. Several people she deceived are joining forces to sue her." Tommy thought for a moment. "That's sad. But she made bad choices, right?" "She did. And now she has to deal with the results of those choices." The intercom rang. It was Catherine, the friend who had inadvertently introduced Jennifer to Michael. She had called a few times in recent weeks, clearly feeling guilty about the role she played. "Hi, Rose," Catherine said when I answered. "Is Michael there?" "He is. Do you want to come up? If it's not too much trouble. I brought something for you all." 5 minutes later, Catherine was sitting in the living room with us, holding a cardboard box. "Michael," she began nervously, "I know I've apologized many times, but I need to do it again. I'm so sorry I introduced Jennifer to you. I'm so sorry I didn't see the signs." "Catherine," Michael said gently, "you're not to blame for anything. Jennifer deceived you too. But I brought her into your life. And because of that, I learned a valuable lesson about not assuming I know someone based on appearances. Catherine, you acted with good intentions. That's what matters. Catherine wiped tears from her eyes. I brought something I thought you should see. She opened the box and took out several notebooks. After everything happened, I went home and looked for everything Jennifer had given me or left at my house over the 2 years I knew her. I found these notebooks hidden in a bag she left in my car a few months ago. What are they? Diaries. Jennifer's diaries documenting her operations. Michael picked up one of the notebooks and began to read. His expression changed from curiosity to shock as he turned the pages. My God, he whispered. These are instructions. How to identify targets, how to create convincing stories, how to avoid leaving legal traces. David picked up another notebook. This is a complete manual of marital fraud. Jennifer was documenting her techniques. That's not all, Catherine said. Look at the last pages of the blue notebook. Michael turned to the last pages and his voice became emotional as he read aloud. Michael is different. With him, I really want to stop. With him, I want to be honest. But I've lied so much that I don't know how to tell the truth without losing everything. The room fell silent. She was struggling, Michael said softly. Part of her wanted to change, but she didn't know how. That doesn't excuse what she did, David pointed out. It doesn't excuse it, Michael agreed. But it humanizes. Jennifer wasn't a monster. She was a person making terrible choices, and part of her knew they were terrible. Tommy approached and looked at the notebooks. Uncle Michael, does this change anything? Michael thought for a long moment. It changes how I feel. I'm still angry about the betrayal. I'm still hurt by the lies. But now I understand that Jennifer was more complex than I thought. She was someone trapped in destructive patterns she didn't know how to break. What are you going to do with these notebooks? I asked. I'm going to give them to the lawyers who are suing Jennifer. It could be important evidence. Even knowing it will hurt her more? Mom, Jennifer hurt many people. If these notebooks can help her victims get justice, then it's the right thing to do. Even if part of me still cares about her. It was the answer of a man who had grown through trauma. Michael had learned that compassion and accountability could coexist. That night, after everyone had left, I sat on the balcony looking at the lights of New York. 3 months ago, my family had been shaken to its core by lies and betrayal. But we had survived. Not just survived, we had grown. Tommy had learned the importance of speaking the truth, even when it's difficult. David had learned that protecting family sometimes means doing uncomfortable things. Michael had learned that trust must be earned, not just given. And me? I learned that sometimes the most important secrets are revealed in the most unexpected places. Under a table at a wedding party, through the honest words of a 6-year-old, and in a family's courage to face painful truths together. Jennifer had disappeared from our lives. But the lessons she taught us about truth, trust, and the importance of truly knowing the people we love, those lessons would remain forever. Like this video, if you believe that the truth, however painful, is always better than living a lie. Subscribe to the channel if you want more stories about family, courage, and the strength that comes from facing reality together. And comment, have you ever discovered a secret that completely changed your perception of someone? Because sometimes the most important truths are told to us by the most unlikely messengers. And sometimes a simple look under the table can save an entire family from years of deception.